Delighted to say I'm being joined by Conor Whelan and Galway hurler. Bit of a strange time at the moment, Conor. Can you just tell me how are you filling the hours and days at the moment?
I suppose trying to keep a consistent routine. I suppose really, getting up around 8:15 every day, making a breakfast, and then doing a bit of teaching online for a couple of hours to try and keep on top of the schoolwork from home, and then I suppose training in the evening on your own. That's basically the nuts and bolts of where it's at, really, I suppose.
And do you have a sort of a routine you can do on your own, or is it sort of? I was talking to one person and they're putting cones out in the middle of a road and running up and down and having to go off every time the cars go by. What are you doing?
I suppose you look at we're all kind of following a separate program, so it kind of depends on the day. I have a bit of equipment at home that I can use as a bit of a gym. I suppose really I wouldn't even call it that really. I suppose, and then I suppose just keeping active, going for a jog, and just trying to keep the level of fitness. I suppose really, we don't really know when the championship is going to happen, or I suppose if it's going to happen. We're just trying to keep active and trying to keep in decent shape until hopefully that does happen.
How did you feel that you were going with Galway coming up to this? Because just looking at the league table, you'd won 3 out of the 5 games. The Limerick game, I'm sure you're very disappointed with how that went. But coming back against both Cork and Tip, it sort of felt like things were starting to come together under Shane O'Neill.
Yeah, I suppose with any new management system, I suppose it takes a while for the players to bed in and get to know them. That's still currently the situation. They're only in the job a couple of months. So I suppose the league was used as a platform, really, I suppose, to get to know that management team better, to try and buy into their philosophy, I suppose, and way of playing, and for that team to get to know their players better. And I think they did trial out lots of players throughout the league, and that's ultimately, I suppose, what the league is used for, is to try and trial out players and try to build a panel towards the championship, really. And I suppose we did turn in a few decent performances towards the back end of the league, and I suppose that's a massive positive for us, is that I suppose vein of form came in the later stages of the league, and we were looking forward to playing Wexford, and ultimately that didn't happen as a result of the pandemic, but I suppose we can be relatively satisfied with the way our league campaign finished.
Did you know much about Shane O'Neill before he got involved? I mean, I suppose plenty of people following the club scene would have seen him with the Piershig winning an All-Ireland there.
Yeah, so ultimately I suppose we knew that he was successful with the Piershig, and he'd won a Club All-Ireland with them. Other than that, I suppose I didn't really know too much, but that's a fair achievement from a managerial perspective. So I think he had plenty pedigree coming.
Would he be very different from how Micheál Donoghue would approach things?
I wouldn't say too different, really. I suppose every management team has their own stamp and their own philosophy. But I suppose at intercounty level, it's mostly all the same. I suppose really, it's still the same panel of players there from last year. And I suppose it's ultimately down to the players on the field to turn in the level of performance. I think he's given players lots of opportunity to stick up their hand, and I suppose luckily enough, from our perspective, we have developed a few players from the league, and that's ultimately the goal of Shane, and the goal of the panel, really, I suppose, is that the way the round robin system is now, it's week on week, and that you need players to be able to come in and out, and you need players to be adaptable to different situations. I suppose that's probably the key message from Shane, really.
It hasn't been ideal for anyone, obviously, the suspension of the season, but I suppose from your point of view, because it ended so early against Dublin last year, and like in many ways it kind of felt to me that you weren't all that far away, just that you kind of ended up the odd ones out with that draw between Kilkenny and Wexford, and then narrowly losing to Dublin yourselves. You got injured the same day, of course. it must be even more frustrating because you were probably so mad to get back to it.
Yeah, look, we were definitely eager to get back. Our last game was June the 16th, 2019, and that's a long time ago. So look, we were really, I suppose, really excited to be back playing competitive games. Pitting yourself against top teams, particularly Munster teams, I suppose that you wouldn't be meeting on a consistent basis. So it was nice to be back playing. There was a nice buzz around. And all the games were very competitive, and that was nice to be back playing. And I suppose we were looking forward to playing Wexford, a team that we probably would be meeting later on in the year. But that obviously went to one side as soon as this pandemic struck. Unfortunately, and I suppose the priority now is ensuring that we can try and flatten that curve and try and stop the spread of the virus through social distancing. So I suppose sport has taken a back seat for now.
Absolutely. Over the winter, you also had success with Kinvara in the Galway Intermediate Championship and got to a Connacht final. Obviously disappointed to lose to Turin as well, but that must have been very satisfying winning that club title.
Yeah, it was. It was extremely satisfying. We were down intermediate for 6 or 7 years. Tough going, down there. And I suppose we just kind of went on a run with the club, and we were lucky enough to be champions. And that was a very special feeling with your club to be able to bring them back up senior. Hurling with lads that you've heard with since you were younger, and the buzz around the place. I suppose that was the silver lining from the year, is that you got to spend more time with the club. You got a chance to be in with them nearly from the start, and ultimately you're able to be fully integrated with the rest of the boys and be training week on week with them. Seeing the buzz around the town afterwards, a very special feeling, going around to the schools and all that afterwards, and seeing how much it meant to the people of the club.
And for yourself, you've won an All-Ireland at this point. You know what that feels like. And how special was it then with the club? And I know it wasn't a senior and it wasn't an All-Ireland, but you've been trying for a long time to get back up. So it must have been great, that final whistle.
Yeah, it was exceptional, really. A very special feeling. I suppose we have been knocking at the door for a long time, and it looks like we'd kind of slipped away. Intermediate is a very, very competitive championship, particularly in Galway, because there's a lot of teams there that could potentially go up, and we just ended up going on a run, really. And I suppose our momentum carried us through from the quarter-final stages, and we were lucky, I suppose, a last second goal to help us win. But we'll take that. We're 6 or 7 years away from the top flight, so I suppose to get senior status again is absolutely crucial for the club and crucial for the younger lads coming through.
You're 23 now, I think. If you jump back to 2015, when you were given your debut against Cork in that All-Ireland quarter-final, as an 18-year-old, do you remember how you received that news when you were told that, hey, you're going in?
I suppose I had a rough idea in the days leading up to it. We played a training match down in Thurles and amongst ourselves, and I was lucky to be on the end of a few moves and got a couple of goals. So I kind of had a slight hope, I suppose, that I was going to be in. But when I look back now, I suppose it was just a mad couple of weeks. I'd only joined up with the panel in April, and I was just kind of thrust in at the age of 18. And that was a very special feeling, I suppose. When I look back, I suppose unfortunate that we weren't able to win that final. But it was a very special year for me, arriving on the scene at the age of 18, I suppose, and it all kind of happened so quick, I suppose, really.
Do you remember playing in the final? Because you scored 2 points, and it really looked like you were in a good position to win that time in 2015 against Kilkenny, but they just turned it around. What happened that day?
Yeah, I can't really put my finger on it, to be honest. We were in a decent position at half time, but Kilkenny are a very experienced outfit. They had a lot of experienced personnel on the field that day, and they just just got on top of us, I suppose, at a crucial stage in the game, and we weren't really able to break their momentum, really, I suppose, and it kind of just slipped away from us, really. Probably could have been up by more at half time, and I suppose that kind of came back to haunt us, really.
When you obviously had some great games with Tipperary over those number of years. 2015, of course, you would have played in that game where I think Shane Maloney scored the winner that day. Then the following year, Tipperary just about edged it with a late comeback in 16. And then 17 again, another unbelievable game with Joe Canning with the winner. What is it about those teams that it just feels like absolute war when you play, and there's only ever really a point between you?
Yeah, Tipperary are a very strong side. They're the champions for a reason, really, I suppose. And I suppose ourselves and Tip have a long history of very good games, and it's just one of those duels, I suppose, where we all kind of, I suppose, we find that extra percent or two whenever we're playing to try and perform to the best of our ability, and it's just free flowing hurling, man on man, and I suppose whoever's the best team wins, and there's always been a small margin there, and we got the better of them in 17, they got the better of us in 16, and they always are exciting games, and it's just a very exciting fixture to be part of, and hopefully we can meet them again in the future. The last game in Salt Hill was also a decent spectacle, and we just really enjoyed that rivalry. I suppose we've massive respect for them, but I suppose once we cross the white line, we always have a good old duel, I suppose, really.
You do indeed, crackers. So does the All-Ireland final, it's 2.5 years ago now, does it feel like a world away?
Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago, really. I suppose 2019 was disappointing to go out at the early stages. 2018, I suppose we just came up short in the end, and it feels like an absolute lifetime ago, I suppose, really. And those are very special times, but I suppose they're all parked now. They're all part of history, and I suppose we're just hoping to try and I suppose improve on last year. Bitterly disappointed with that. Still something that doesn't necessarily sit too well with us. Unfortunate, I suppose, really. But I suppose on the night in question, we probably didn't perform to the best of our ability, and I suppose that's just the way it goes. And hopefully we'll be able to get back this year and turn in a few decent performances, I suppose, really, and hopefully see where that goes.
Did you kind of live out a bit of a boyhood dream when you found the net in that 2018 final? Now, I know you didn't win the game, but just actually the fact that you nailed one into the net in the All-Ireland final, that must have been brilliant.
Yeah, I suppose I haven't really thought about it too much. I suppose we were in desperate need of goals at that stage. Just a long ball landed in, and I was lucky enough to put it to the net. But I suppose those were desperate times, really. Limerick had a fairly sizable lead, and they were the better team on the day. So to be honest, I haven't really thought about it too much since.
Most of us that only dream of doing something like that, it doesn't take a funk out of you. But at the very end, when Canning had the free from, it was a distance that basically they don't go over. So I don't think anyone would ever look back and say he should have scored that. No one is saying that. But like when he was lining up to take that, did you think he has a shot at getting this, or what were you thinking?
To be honest, I was just basically in the square there, hoping to get on the end of it. It did land in the square, but I suppose I couldn't really get to it. But there's no I suppose question that it was a very difficult free. It was a long way out. I don't think we ever really would turn around and point fingers at any one person. I suppose as a team we didn't perform on the day for whatever reason. I suppose we will never know. But on the day in question, we didn't perform to the best of our ability, and I suppose Limerick were the better side on the day, really.
Do you think how much of a bearing did it have last year that Joe Canning was injured for 3 to 4 games and only came back late on against Dublin in that match? And of course you were injured very early on in that game, but how much of a bearing did it have the fact that you were probably in a position where you could get knocked out on the last day, that he wasn't involved?
Look at Joe's an exceptional player. I think there's no question about that. Anytime you're missing one of your big players, I suppose a player of the caliber of Joe is always going to be a loss. But I think credit to the boys that stepped up in his place. I think that kind of goes unseen as well sometimes, in that there is players to come in and turn in decent performances. Obviously we did miss him, but I don't think he was the sole factor as to why we crashed out. I suppose um, we'd come up from Nolan Park after getting a win, but we still had a few injuries. We had some people struggling with form, and we just didn't put in the level of performance that Saturday night in question. And any time that you're not at the level, I suppose you're always prone to be turned over by certain teams. As it turned out, score difference played a factor, and obviously we were on the unfortunate end of that, and all those factors came together really. So I suppose, to answer your question, he was a huge loss, but there was a number of factors, I suppose, really that contributed to that really.
Because like you think about, you went and won in Nolan Park when people probably thought you mightn't win that game, and that was a brilliant performance. You only went out on score difference. People have been talking about, even the year before you won All Irelands and you got to All Ireland finals. So when you go out in such fine margins, people all of a sudden think that you mightn't be an All Ireland challenger anymore. Whereas I would say, as Cyril Farrell has said, all the pieces of the puzzle are there. So I would see he's still very much in line as an All Ireland challenger. I'm sure you feel the same.
Well, to be honest with you, I think our sole focus this year, whenever it does happen, is to try and come out of Leinster. We were unsuccessful in doing that last year. That's ultimately our objective. Really, is to come out of our province first of all, and then see, I suppose, where that takes us. Leinster is a very competitive environment. You're playing week on week. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have lads who, I suppose, it doesn't go well for, and you have to change around the team and stuff like that. So it is a bit hectic, I suppose, really. And I think our sole focus at the current moment is going to be to try and come out of Leinster.
How much, like, obviously Shane is in now, and I'm sure he's going to be a very good manager with Galway. How tough was it for you personally, like the man who given you your debut, Micheál Donoghue, to see him leave?
Well, my debut was actually from Anthony Cunningham.
Oh,
So,
big boo boo there. Still the same question. I'm sure he's
but
great.
yeah, Micheál would have had a huge influence on my career. His Micheál and his management team, Franny Ford, Noel Larkin, Damien Joyce, Dave Morris, to name a few. They were a very good unit, and they did progress, I suppose, Galway hurling on a substantial amount. Super coaches. Micheál was a super manager, and a very nice person. And he would have helped me to develop my game, I suppose, massively. So he would have had a huge influence. So ultimately, when Micheál made the decision to step away, that's something that you have to respect too. He has a young family and kids and all that. So that's all. I suppose there's always going to be disappointment there. I suppose we've all, as players, parked that and moved on and looking towards the future now. And we have a management team in place, and we're all working very hard, to try and impress that management team and try and nail down our place on the team, hopefully.
So just two more questions, and one would be, how much do you think you've developed as a player between the 18-year-old who was thrown in by Anthony Cunningham? I don't know if you remember, he was the manager who dropped you in back in 2015. How different are you now versus that 18-year-old? Because I even see you kind of, and maybe you did all the time anyway, but roaming out in and out to the half-forward line, interchange and that sort of stuff. But how different are you now?
Look, I suppose you're always hoping to be able to develop and progress as a hurler. Obviously you get smarter with time. You pick up on certain things, and I suppose you're always learning from others too. I probably started out in 18 with a good few older lads who have retired since, but you're always learning from them, and you're still learning on the job. There's still lots of lads there who've been there a long time and trying to develop and progress your game. And I suppose that's ultimately the objective, is to try and make yourself as adaptable as possible, regardless of whether you're playing inside or outside. And that's a constant challenge for me as a player to try and continue to develop and try and progress. And that's something that it takes time, and hopefully year on year you're able to see that development. And that's ultimately the goal, I suppose, really.
And then just the final question: when teams eventually do come back, and we've no idea when it'll be, and obviously it's not important in the grand scheme of things, do you need a certain amount of time before you can go back playing matches? Do you need like several weeks of training? You need a few challenge matches. Like, how quickly could teams go back into action?
Well, I think you definitely need a window for players to, I suppose, integrate back into it, to try and sharpen up, to try and bring a level of intensity that's, let's be honest, it's not feasible to be at the level training on your own as it is training collectively. People have talked about a 2-week window. I don't think that's feasible. If you take out the week of the match, which is usually a deload week, you're talking 1 week for players to be able to get up to speed. I don't think that's feasible. But ultimately, the way this crisis is going on, we don't know how long it's going to go on for. But I think it's very important that players are given a window of time to prepare themselves, for a championship coming down the line, whether that's knockout, whether it's round robin, whatever it is. It's important for players to get that window of time to be able to sharpen, to be able to work on a bit of fitness that they haven't been able to, I suppose, get to the same level, to work on your skills as well, and to integrate into the management their philosophy, and I suppose, get back to the way it was, I suppose, really. I think people have talked about 4 weeks. I suppose, that would be definitely better than 2 weeks. You're talking about a block of time for players to prepare and train for a championship. I suppose that's the most important thing, is the players get that window, however long it is. That'll be up to higher powers than us. But I suppose we would echo the fact that we will need a window of time, I suppose, really.
Well, thanks very much, Conor. You've been very good with your time. I'm sure we'll chat again, and keep safe.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.